Welcome back to Bread and Butter, where we are serving up the basics for Hearthstone improvement. This is episode 133, I think, and today we are joined by Giffca. Giffca, how are you today?
I am doing well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you for being here. And I don't know why I did this out of order, but Pylet's here as always. Pylet, how are you?
I'm doing well, just out of order.
I didn't have it in the show notes, and I'm going by the show notes. So
It hasn't been in the show notes for like 3 months.
You're right, but I just read it, and it's okay.
It's being in a different location.
Yeah, I'm at my New Hampshire residence tonight instead of my Rhode Island residence. But that's okay. Giffca, what have you been doing inside of the game of Hearthstone lately?
Yeah. So just hit Legend today after a long streak of spending a lot of time, too much time at Diamond 5, messing around with terrible decks. I feel like it was probably a good week or two where I was losing maybe 70% of my games, and then I was like, okay, let's switch it up. I put together a Incendious Hunter a couple days ago, and I went 14-1 to Legend, so now at 4,000 Legend rank, so not too bad, but glad to finally be there.
How about yourself, Pylet? What have you been up to?
So all the success that I talked about last week, I am now washed up. It has not been a good week. I haven't played a whole lot because school started, but I'm pulling up my stats to make sure I have this right. I'm pretty sure across multiple days I was on like a 10 or 12 game losing streak for the week. It was not great. And I wasn't even playing bad decks. I just could not buy a win. And that carried straight over into my THL match where I don't think I played great because I was tired and not super focused, but I got swept. And then I'm like, I'm going to play a couple more games. I'm going to win eventually. I'm like, I'm not ending on this. And I won the next game with some Nebula Shaman. But we'll see. It's getting close to the end of the month to where I'm not overly concerned. I'm still sitting around 2,000 Legend. So if I can put together a little bit of streak, I'll probably push to get back into 11x because it's been a little while, mainly with how little time I've had to play. But we'll just see what happens.
And I also just hit Legend yesterday because I also hung around the D5 floor because I was also playing bad decks. Namely, I played a lot of Quest Mage, which I know is okay. I really think Quest Mage might be better without the quest, at least in Standard, because you always end up with these choices, and it's like I could either Wheel of Death or I can Supernova, which is great. Except I also have the Rogue one that shuffles everything in your deck, and you're like, well, that's not a really good mix there. And if the order is right, it's worked out great, as we kind of saw during theory crafting. But if it's not, then you're just kind of washed. And then I spent all that time trying to make my Cinder Shaman work, which it did sometimes, and it was a lot of fun, but it wasn't great. So I spent the last couple days playing a lot of Starship Death Knight, and I've really kind of come to like that deck. And obviously, like we say, it's always Demon Hunter Death Knight. You always got to say both of them at the same time because we can never really tell. But I watched well, I'll get to that anyway. But yeah, we got to Legend last night. I'm around 6,000 and steady holding there. I've been playing pretty evenly today, enjoying it. But Giffca, what have you been doing outside of the game?
Yeah. So this summer, I'd say probably the two main hobbies of mine are gardening and golf. So gardening, just installed raised beds this year with my wife. We got tomatoes, eggplants, zucchini, peppers, you name it. And then on the flower side of things, I just started like native gardening, so wildflowers, things like that. Gotten some good blooms this summer. That's been really fun. And then golf. Just try to get out maybe a couple times a month, usually with work friends or people on the weekends.
What's your handicap?
I'm at a 15 right now, so not too bad. We got our work league has a playoff in another week or two, so I've been doing okay. Hoping to end the season on a good note.
Fantastic. I'm actually probably double that for my handicap, but that's okay. That's a whole different game that I play a lot that I'm not good at. Pylet, what have you been up to?
Mainly school because that started back up. So had our first week of school with a couple in-service days and then 3 days with students in the first football game. So far, so good. Just getting back into the swing of things and getting everything sorted out. Thankfully, since high school band's been going, where that's already settled in and we just jump right in. And it's just getting, elementary bands and junior high bands situated and sorted out. Still been playing Avowed. I think I'm close to like halfway through the second area right now. Hitting a little bit more difficult enemies. Need to be a little bit more tactical in how I play rather than they'll die in a couple hits anyways. So finally I think I had my first death by an enemy today. I've died twice because I thought that I could go somewhere that I couldn't. It looked like an area I was supposed to be able to go. Like it's just like, oh, I can slide down this hill, I can parkour my way down, and then I died the first time. I'm like, okay, that was farther than I thought it was. I'll go more careful, and I definitely didn't fall far enough to die. That's when I learned, okay, this is out of bounds. Got it, because the map is not clear in that game with what's out of bounds. So, been enjoying that. I played in a Lorcana tournament yesterday at one of our local stores. It's the same one that does a monthly win-a-box, and we had actually a lot of new players there yesterday. I think 4 or 5 of the 12 people were brand new, like first time playing in a tournament players. So that was a lot of fun, a lot more laid back, but super friendly group, helping each other out, making sure everyone's having a good time and people want to come back. And especially that store runs a adult and youth division. Granted, the kid who got top was third place overall and smoked most of the adults. But that's how it goes sometimes. And then my family had our fantasy football draft today. I'm not sure how I'm going to do in that one. I won the league last year, so I was at the end of the snake draft, and I thought that I liked my picks, and then Yahoo gives a little draft grade afterwards. It's just like, you tried to be a lot smarter than you were, and I don't think you're going to do as well this season. But that's what it normally does. I think last year I got like a D on my draft grade, and I was head and shoulders above for most of the season. So we'll see what happens. But it wouldn't be surprising if I continue my streak of winning the league one year and then finishing at the bottom of the next because I can't draft.
Wow, Yahoo! That's a name I have not heard in a long time. Don't we have to have the Blizzlet draft coming up soon, right?
Labor Day.
Oh, is it on Labor Day itself?
It's on Labor Day afternoon.
Okay, I may not be able to draft if it's during the afternoon because I'll probably be driving, but that's okay. I had a mini vacation. I took Thursday, Friday, and Monday off, and then I'm also going to take Friday off around Labor Day. Just take some time with my kid before it goes back to school. This weekend, we went down to Boston on Saturday for the Pokemon Go Max Super Finale thing, and it was kind of cool to walk around Faneuil Hall and do some Pokemon, and we did that for a little while. We had to go back to the mall today to finish up because we weren't there all day yesterday, and you have to get to... Had we started the pass at the beginning of the week, whenever it started, we would have been fine. But you had to get to like level 60 on a pass, and we needed a few more events and whatnot. So we did that today and finished that up. So that was nice. I'm still doing the fasting thing. It's been 2.5, 3 weeks, something like that. And I, for the most part, have maintained it. 2 days this week on the vacation, I broke the fast at 2 instead of 5 because of what we were doing. And I wasn't going to, and I'm trying to not make it a hindrance to life. And if I happen to go out for lunch or whatever, that's fine. I'll try to push it as close to the end of the day as I can. But for the most part, it's going good. I'm less losing weight and I'm more maintaining. So we have to kind of work some other things in there. But it's going well. I'm happy. And also, I watched last night while I was climbing, I watched K-pop Demon Hunters, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. The music just slapped. It was a lot of fun. I highly recommend it. You've probably heard about it. Not really my type of thing. I don't watch a lot of anime or that kind of thing, but I really enjoyed it. So definitely go out and watch it. Pylet, I think we have news, but I think let's get to go know our guest here first, and then we'll jump to the news.
Yeah.
So Giffca, sorry. How did you get started in gaming, and how did that lead to Hearthstone?
Yeah. So I grew up playing video games. I would say my intro into Hearthstone was through World of Warcraft first. Played World of Warcraft kind of in high school, and then when I was in college, put it down for a bit. And then Hearthstone came out when I was kind of in the middle of college. Started playing later in like kind of near graduation and stuck with it for a bit. I remember watching like the first World Championships and Firebat and all that stuff, and I was like, oh, this is kind of a fun game. And started playing it kind of beyond college, and that's what brought me to Chicago and Chicago Hearthstone community. So I was new to the city, didn't know anybody, and I saw that there was like a in-person fireside gathering for Hearthstone, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Let me go check it out. And so I went to that event, met a lot of people, had a really good time, and continued to play with those guys for years. And then a few years later, took over the Chicago Hearthstone community. So yeah, that was kind of my background in some of the gaming, how I got into Hearthstone, and then some of the in-person dynamic as well.
So where does the name Giffca come from? And is it pronounced Giffca or Giffca?
Yeah. So you've got it. It's Giffca. So it comes from a game called Fire Emblem. That's like a RPG franchise that Nintendo makes that I've been a big fan of for a long time. I've played many of the entries, and Giffca is a kind of little known like side character at the end of one of the games, but he's very powerful and can turn into a lion. And I was like, that's kind of cool. I'm the youngest of four children, and my older brothers, they imposed a rule in World of Warcraft that you couldn't name your character just like some random name like Bob or whatever. Like it had to be like named after a cool character. And so at one point I named my World of Warcraft character Giffca, and that stuck around. And then I used that as my Hearthstone name some number of years later. So that's kind of the origin story there.
I'm a little worried about the parallels that are being drawn between you and me. We both struggled around D5 for a long time, both golf. We both put our name in for World of Warcraft, and that kind of stuck to our Hearthstone names. I don't know what else might happen. So you were an innkeeper for Firesides in Chicago, for the that now defunct Firesides, which is sad. But tell us about that, and maybe about some of the people that maybe we know that you might have met.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, like I mentioned, like I just kind of went to a fireside gathering or one of those in-person get-togethers for Hearthstone early on in my time in the city, not knowing what to expect and not knowing anybody there. Met a lot of really great people. I really enjoyed that kind of scene. There were some different tournaments that were held, pretty regularly, and but they were a mix of either competitive tournaments where a lot of people went and were kind of try-harding, wanting to qualify even. I think there were some like qualifier events back in, let's call it 2019, 2020, something like that. And then lots of really casual events as well. So yeah, got to meet a ton of really awesome people I still spend time with to this day. And then from Chicago, there were a couple interesting folks where I think that there were people who were like well regarded in the Hearthstone community, and one person in particular was a professor and like a statistician, and he was very highly regarded among the top competitive players, and his name was referenced on stream for various Hearthstone playoffs and things like that, and it was like, oh, you got to watch out for this lineup. He's been spending time with Ivan, and now all of a sudden, like, he's got the min max, and they've been optimizing and Monte Carlo simulation, and you got to watch out for this lineup. And I was like, wait a minute, I know that guy. So yeah, it's kind of cool to see, both a mix of very casual folks, but then also people who are very invested in the game and spend a lot of time playing as well.
Now, I know we were joking around being stuck at the Diamond 5 floor, but you've actually done some competitive Hearthstone. You've competed to attempt to get into the Masters Tour, and also you were featured in a Trollden video, I think, a couple times. So tell us about those things.
Yeah. So I would say those are a couple of my highest Hearthstone achievements. One was I won a Chicago tournament however many years ago to qualify for the Challenger Series. So this was like kind of an intro to I think that various locations would have their own in-person tournament, and then if you won that, you would be entered in a Challenger Series, which is a big bracket, a Swiss bracket, and then that would give you qualification into like a Masters Tour or a playoff or something like that. And so I won my local tournament, and then in the Challenger tournament, I was the top of the Swiss bracket. I went, I think, 5-1, and then I lost in the last round of the playoffs, which was kind of a bummer, but really fun experience. So yeah, I've got a little bit of competitive Hearthstone in me, but I'm more of kind of a memer. I like to build garbage decks and take them to Legend every single month, and so that's where the Trollden side of things comes in. I was just like hanging around one day, and someone tagged me on Discord. They're like, "Hey, did you see that you were in a Trollden video?" And I was Kibler's opponent, and it was turn 7. This is like 2021 or something like that. And I played Vosh Prime, and it drew 3 cards. And then I did Lightning Bloom, and then I did a Macaw, and I drew 3 more cards. And then I killed him from like 20 health, and he was just standing there like mouth agape. He emoted, the game ended, and I was like, so like that's what I like to do. That is more of my bread and butter for how I play Hearthstone, is like just building silly decks, having a good time with them, and then when they finally go off, your opponent has no choice but to emote and be like, that was great.
Now, do you remember the name of the person that beat you in that tournament?
I think it was like Sneaky Chi, something like that. But I remember the final moments of the final game where I could either play around Leroy Jenkins or I could play around Spellbreaker, and I played around Spellbreaker, but he had Leroy, or maybe it was the other way around, but like it was one of those things where like, okay, as long as he doesn't have this, I got it, or I have to choose one but not the other, and I chose wrong, and I was like, that's the end of the tournament. That's tough, but that's how it goes sometimes.
Fair enough. Now, you did mention that you like to do some off-meta deck building and stuff. So, what's your favorite class, and what are some of your favorite brews that you've made?
Yeah, so I would say my favorite class is probably either Priest or Shaman. I spent a lot of time with a lot of different decks. I think most recently, I would say I've played a lot of Warrior actually in the last month or so. I've been trying to make like a Dragon Warrior work, which has been pretty fun. Not super successful, but I would say the most the class that I've had the most fun doing off meta builds for was definitely Shaman. That was like my highlight reel deck against Kibler. There was a Reddit post that I made in like probably 2020 or something where I had dubbed a deck called Incredible Shaman because you would play Arcane Watcher on turn 3, 3 mana 5/6, cannot attack unless you have spell damage. And every single time I played that card, my opponent would emote no matter what. And like that was my favorite deck in all of Hearthstone. I ended up spending a ton of time refining it. I took it to Legend. I had like a 70% win rate. It wasn't a good deck. It was a bad time for Shaman. They were a bad class. But like spending time building that spell damage Shaman was a ton of fun. And that was probably one of my favorite classes to like refine and decks to build on for some number of months.
And Shaman's a bad class now, so everything that was old is new again.
Exactly.
Uh, so, have you ever had any of your decks become meta, or maybe a deck you've been working on became meta that somebody else also had the same ideas for, or whatnot?
So I would say the closest is probably this Incredible Shaman. And so I made like a Reddit post. It got a little bit of traction. People liked it. A week or two later, I saw somebody like reference like at the end of a meta report, somebody was like, Shama is dead. It's in the dumpster. Someone might have come up with something, but it's too early to say. And like, they referenced like my name in the Reddit post and all that stuff, which was kind of cool. And I remember at one point, I got No Hands Gamer to take a look at the deck on stream, and he was playing it for a little bit, and like he had a little bit of success, but I remember him saying, he's like, I can't play this deck anymore. Like I'm gonna want to try and fix it or like perfect it, and it's gonna drive me crazy. So I just need to put this deck down. It's like I shouldn't spend time trying to make your idea work. It might be able to work, but that's a bad idea for me, and it's gonna drive me crazy. So that's the closest I've been to like having a deck really catch on or things like that.
So we're kind of in a meta where a lot of the new cards haven't quite hit. We've talked about it extensively. We don't need to go too deep into that. But um, how hard is it to brew decks when you're trying to make new decks when the cards in the meta aren't quite that strong that where we are now?
Yeah, it's really tough. I can speak to my kind of experience trying to. Well, I made it to Legend last month with a Dragon Warrior. It was probably like maybe 60% win rate for me over some number, I don't know, 30, 40 games, something like that. But it was when Dorian Warlock was, really the showstopper. And if your deck, yeah, didn't have a plan for that, you would just lose. And so what was really tough was that essentially, like, if you didn't have any armor gain, or you couldn't, if you took like any chip damage at all in the first few turns, you might just die even if you got armor later on. And so like having to walk that line of I want to try something new, or like I want to try and do a strategy that doesn't come online until turn 7 or something like that, and knowing that, oh, I took like 5 damage in the first few turns, I guess that means that if they have the Dorian turn, I'm just gonna lose. So that was kind of tough in general with a meta game kind of like the Ungoro has. It can be difficult to have pet cards. Like you can't be overly tied to, okay, I'm not going to play any deck except for this one until it works, because you might spend a lot of time trying to get something to work that's not going to work. And so I would say that's what I've had to do this past like month or two, is just be flexible. If something's not working, you got to give it up. I spent a lot of time trying to play like Imbue Mage and versions of Imbue Mage. It was kind of fun, kind of close, but I could never get it to stick. And I was like, okay, I need to switch to something else. Just put this on the side for a bit.
What are your feelings on Black Rock and Roll and Rye Cleaver?
Black Rock and Roll, I can get behind that one. Rye Cleaver. So here's another thing as well is I'm free to play. So I do not have every single card in my collection. And I think that's like one of the initial constraints that I put on myself is like, okay, I'm not gonna be able to craft every single card. I'm not gonna go from deck to deck to deck and build whatever I want. So I'm gonna be thoughtful about what I want to play with. I've never opened Rye Cleaver. I would be terrified to open it because I would feel compelled to try and make it work at least a little bit. Black Rock and Roll, I can get behind. The what is it? The Abyssal Soloist or whatever, where like it's a 7 mana card, but it actually ends up costing so much less because if you equip some weapons and stuff, that was always a really nice combo where you buff it up and then it still costs 0. So yeah, I like some of those cards, and those are examples of cards that I think are like more fun to build around. The example that I'll use is like Mech Warrior right now, where my one card that I care about is the testing dummy, and my entire deck is just doing the testing dummy thing. That's not as fun of a build around experience for me as something like Black Rock and Roll. I think that's a little more interesting.
All right. So you've started a website called Giffca's Tavern. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of, it started with my experience as like an innkeeper for Chicago Hearthstone. So, I was a tournament organizer. I would run monthly fireside gatherings, things like that. And the main experience was at certain times of the year, the metagame would either be really stale and people were not looking forward to playing or like getting together to play Hearthstone, or even if the meta wasn't necessarily stale, there would be such highly refined decks, or like the tournament scene would not be that interesting to compete in. And at my job as a community leader and fireside gathering coordinator, things like that, is to get people to leave their house, go to a bar, play Hearthstone, and drink some beer. And so if you don't have an interesting and compelling reason to do that, you're just going to stay at home and play on the ladder. And so what I would do is we would create kind of these different tournament rules and spice things up a little bit by saying, okay, your deck can only contain this many cards above 5 mana, or it has to have at least 3 Murlocs, or this set of cards is off limits for this tournament, things like that. And so I would do that manually and talk with people and kind of run tournaments that way. And eventually I was like, I think I want to create a tool for someone like me, or a website that someone can use to kind of create custom rule sets, invite people to play on their terms, validate deck lists, all that good stuff. And so that's where Giffca's Tavern comes in. It's a website that is a custom rule set builder for Hearthstone. And so you can kind of create your own rules from scratch. You can say, if you want to play with me, here are the rules of engagement. Your deck must have this many cards of this type. It can have, this many cards from this class set, or card set, or this many cards from this class. All these different rules where you can kind of make very simple rules where it's, you can only have 2 cards that cost more than 4 mana. Or you can make really complicated rules where, you're allowed to have 1 card from the core set, and it must be a legendary, but it also must be a beast, and it must contain the word discover. And it's like, okay, well that kind of narrows down my deck building. And so I kind of built this website with those sort of mechanics in mind, and making it really easy to create custom rule sets and share them with other people. I trialed it out with the Chicago Hearthstone community last month, and we did a format where the only cards allowed were from the core set and Ungoro, and all the quests were banned from the tournament. So that really kind of narrowed the deck building into just a very limited set of cards, but cards that people are not playing a ton with, and you wouldn't know what was going to be good and what was not going to be good. And so the experience there was that everyone had a ton of fun. They spent a lot of time kind of theory crafting and deck building. Nobody knew what was going to be good, what wasn't going to be good. I remember that the night before the tournament, we were all going to get together. One of the people from the community, he messaged me on Discord, and he said, I just want to let you know, I think I've got a 100% win rate deck, and you might actually want to ban it because it might be too good, and like I don't want to ruin the experience for everybody else. And this guy's good at Hearthstone, and I totally trust him and believe him. But I was like, okay, well, we'll just see what happens. And the next day comes, and he only wins 1 round with that deck. And so like that's why I think that this sort of a website, this sort of idea is fun and compelling, is like you have no idea what the best deck is. There's no metagame, there's no win rate data, there's no podcast at the end of the week saying this is tier one, this is garbage, why would you even play this deck? We've got the perfect 30, like don't even get me started on what the perfect 30 means. But like the idea is you get people together, nobody knows what's going to be good, and you have a lot of fun doing it. And that was what we found. And so that's why I built the website. I'm hoping to share it more publicly in the next month or so. But in the meantime, it was really fun to kind of test it out with the Chicago Hearthstone community and see that it was well received and kind of led to a fun and different Hearthstone experience.
Okay, first of all, if you just said, "Hey, let's go to the bar and play Hearthstone," I'm there already. Like, I don't need any other incentive. It's okay, great, perfect. I go to the bars to play cribbage. Hearthstone,
Okay.
make it better. Secondly, so that's interesting because as you were talking and explaining this, a couple years ago, myself and Dragon Rider, we did this thing called Fight Night on Friday nights. We did 3 of them, and we want to do more, but hopefully we'll get back into it. And the first night we had Sidisi versus Wicked Good, and Wicked Good had to bring all priest decks, and Sidisi had to bring all hunter decks, and it was hunter versus priest. And then the next time, I had it backwards.
Yeah.
I had it the other way. Yeah. Oh God.
They had to
Poor
play the
Sid.
opposite classes.
No. Sid had to play. Sid had to play hunter.
I thought that we had maybe. I don't know. I thought it was the
No.
other way.
Sid has one priest win.
Oh,
He
you're
will
right.
never-
You're right.
So that, but then the next time we had community members build decks, and then the competitors had to. It was just the guy and Blister guy. It was the battle of the guys, and I don't know if you know them, but just the guy is the father of Cora and Sage from the Hearthstone team, and he's actually messaging me right on Discord because I'm telling him where's the content been lately, just the guy, where's the content, but. They had to draft the decks, so they didn't see the decks, and they said, "Oh, I'll take Ridiculous Hat's deck," and it was this, and we had Funky Monkey make one, and a couple others. But the third one, it was Edelweiss versus Warshack, and they're both off-meta deck builders, and we had community members build half a deck, and they had to draft again, but then they got half a deck, and they had to figure out what to do with it and build the remaining 15 cards and do that. So we were trying to come up with ideas to make esports and competitive Hearthstone a little different, a little more fun. So it seems like, while not exactly 100% parallel with what you're doing, it seems like there could be a lot of overlap there and maybe some potential.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that like examples like that are where my interests lie and where this website came in is like there's a lot of community interest in doing things that are Hearthstone based, Hearthstone related, but outside of the confines of the regular standard ladder. And I think that even like Twist was kind of a good foray in seeing like what this could look like. Certain tavern brawls can be really interesting, but they come and go pretty quickly. And it's not something that you can kind of host a community event around. And so being able to kind of create your own rule set and say, this is what we're all playing with, and here's how it's going to work. Like it allows you to kind of change the rules of Hearthstone and get people all on the same page in a way that you can't during the regular game. So I think it's really fun.
It does sound fun. But speaking of fun, yes, going to a fireside, doing fun things, hanging out with people, having some beers, whatever. That sounds like a lot of fun. Most people play standard, and occasionally some weirdos like us play competitive Hearthstone, like something like a THL or something like that, which is like a competitive format. So outside of the fun, what would the incentive for people to play games outside of ladder or league format be once you have your site kind of more active? Like, what's going to drive them there and keep them there?
For sure. Yeah. I've spent a lot of time thinking about that as well, where it's like even as a community organizer, the innkeeper for Chicago, like you kind of gotta give people a reason to participate in your tournaments or come out and do something other than go for the ladder finish and things like that. And so I think that one of the audiences that I have in mind is people like me who run community events. I think it's really fun and easy to build a compelling rule set that says, hey, this is actually kind of interesting and different. I want to see what I can build. I think other examples of people who would find it useful are content creators, streamers. Kind of the examples that you mentioned is, I want to host a tournament against my Twitch chat, and we're going to be doing this particular custom rule set, and here's how it's going to go, and we're going to kind of build it collaboratively, and now everyone's got the same rules, and now we're going to submit our decks that way. I think kind of the third example is there are a lot of these amazing off-meta streamers. Like I follow Warshak pretty regularly, big fan of his stream and content there. But there are lots of people who are saying like, oh, if you give me a day one unsolved meta, I'm gonna be the best. Like I'm the best Hearthstone player, all this stuff. And so this gives them a chance to say, well, are you really? Can you build the best deck? I think a lot of people, especially the folks on Reddit and things like that, they kind of really lean into and maybe even depend on the Vicious Syndicate report, and they need to know, oh, this deck is 53% win rate, this one's 51%. There's no reason to play a 51% win rate deck. Why would you? There's a 53% win rate deck out there. And so those folks, if they were brought into a brand new unsolved metagame, would they be able to compete at a level that goes against the people who are maybe more familiar with theory crafting, deck building, that sort of stuff? So I think that's the last category that I think is kind of interesting, is you put everybody on a level playing field. Nobody's spent weeks researching the data here. You really have to kind of lean on your deck building instincts.
So now, are you able to run these tournaments through your site? And if so, are you also thinking about maybe also branching that off into just basic standard kind of tournaments and whatnot as well, to kind of maybe grow your audience?
Yeah. So right now the main like tournament hosting compatibility is through Battlefy. So that's what I found is like most of the tournaments that I've been a part of and that I've seen are through Battlefy. And so the way that I made it easy to use and compatible there is like, if you're a tournament organizer and you've got 128 people in your tournament, they each submitted 3 decks. That's a lot of different decks that you would need to validate against a very custom rule set. If you had any of the things that I just described, these would be a lot of tedious things. You wouldn't be able to look at all the decks. But my website allows you to download the participant deck lists from Battlefy and drop the entire file directly into the website. It'll check every single player, every single deck, and it'll tell you what cards are valid, what cards are not. So you can kind of just do at a glance, okay, I've got 128 people in my tournament, and these 4 people all submitted invalid decks. I'm going to go reach out to them. I can tell them what rule they broke and what cards were invalid. And now they know, hey, I've got 2 hours to fix my deck list, or I can make sure that I get it submitted and finalized before the tournament starts. So right now the website really is all about like rule set building and deck validation. There's no tournament like organization within the website itself. It really is kind of that space to create the rules of the game, but then the tournament itself takes place outside of that. That's something I want to get into more, is like being kind of a partner for different tournaments, as well as allowing people to kind of save their rule sets and have a running list, kind of like allow people to submit rule sets, upvote, downvote, things like that. I think that would be kind of cool. So it's not just one person visits the site and send it to everybody, but rather you can kind of come up with or collaborate on cool rules for you and future tournaments.
And you'd almost think that Blizzard at some point, Team 5, might incorporate something like this into the client, maybe with a little bit of a twist. I don't know. But anyway, are there any tools that you wish Team 5 would give you? Because I know that there's not really a strong API that you can use or anything like that. Are there things missing that you really could take advantage of?
Okay, so you did just bring up Twist. I think that's a good example. So I was building kind of a different version of this website that was a little bit similar, a little bit different, and then I heard about Twist, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna put this aside for a little bit. Like, it sounds like Blizzard's already thought of this, they're on it, and now Twist is kind of like wilting, to put it nicely. And so maybe my first ask of Team 5 is, you can go ahead and kill Twist. I'll take care of it. You could just use Giffca's Tavern.top, shameless plug. And so, just go ahead and kill it. That's fine. The second one, which is like very unique from the developer perspective, is so like every card has a hosted image on a static site that Blizzard hosts, and then they also have like the little tiny preview image. And if you've seen like the tiny preview image, which is like what you see on like HS Guru or HS Replay, the little block. And the weird thing about all these images is that they are very different sizes, and some of them have like a ton of white space or all this stuff. And so my ask of Blizzard would be, if you could also just make a preview image that is like the standardized, it's a nice rectangle, it can show the mana cost, it can show the class, it can show what, give it the border, give it the mana crystal, and just make it all the same size. Because as someone I have familiarity and experience building websites, but I'm not like the world's best programmer. And so having to deal with stuff like that, you're just like, why is this so hard? That would be my other ask. So kill Twist, and then also give me little tiny preview images for all the cards, please.
Well, I think you got your first wish. And I would say that it kind of wilted long before they stopped putting it out there. But that's just my opinion. Um, yeah, and you're not giving a shameless plug. You're actually here to promote your product, so that's fine. Uh, are there any other future plans for the site? And is there anything else you want to say about it before we wrap up and move on to the next topic?
Yeah. So I think my first step was like, okay, I've built everything I wanted to build. I ran a tournament with it. It's working great. I want to go talk about it, share it with folks, anyone who's interested, anyone who will listen. So I mean, thank you for having me on the podcast. Really happy to talk about it. I'm interested in folks giving feedback. If anyone wants to partner and run a tournament, if anyone's looking for just like a demo of how it works, happy to do all that. Future things for the site, I kind of want to make it a little bit easier for folks to see exactly what their deck is doing right and wrong. Right now, it shows you what cards broke what rules. Some of the data that I use is not always like the most user friendly because it's coming from like directly from a Hearthstone API. So there's some stuff to tidy up there. And then one thing that I think would be cool, kind of like I mentioned earlier, is having like a running list of here are some rule sets and some tournaments that people ran. And as people kind of come up with these really interesting and kind of like enduring meta games that were really fun and impactful, save it, share it, like let people come back to it and say, this was a really cool format. I'm curious what decks won. And if I were to, look at it 6 months later, would I have, would the same deck have won, or would people have changed their mind? And it's kind of the same thing as like when Hearthstone Classic came out. Is will things be different however many years later? Yes or no? And some things were. So having like a running list of things like that, I think would make it kind of cool and more of like an evergreen concept that people can come back to.
One thing I think would be cool, just to wrap this up, is if I could come in and I could jump into like how I used to have the sit and goes at like the poker games in the online, and I go in and you log in and you say, all right, let's go. And then it says, all right, here are your rules. You have 30 minutes to build decks. Let's go. And then you're in a little mini tournament of like 8 people and whatnot. And you have these fun rules. So I think stuff like that could be kind of fun and addicting to get in there. So that's just a free thought, but
No, I love that. Yeah, open to ideas, open to feedback. I put my Discord. I'll put my Discord out there, and then also I've got my email on the bottom of the website if folks want to send random thoughts or comments. Always open to it. But that's a cool idea for sure.
all right. So Pylet, before we get into news, I think I understand why you've been washed this week. You're wearing a New York Jets shirt.
All
But
right.
anyway, do we have any news today?
We do have some news that came out. We had the teaser last week when we recorded, but we did not have the full patch notes. So we had the 33.2.2 patch, with most of it focusing on Battlegrounds. We're not going to talk about that. There's like 40 changes there that went into effect, but we did have two standard changes where Amir Drasil went from 4 to 5 mana, and Reserve Spot went from 3 to 4 mana. And when we were talking last week, Zeddy had mentioned and alluded to the dev comment that we got for it. And looking at a couple things from there, they said, we want to share a quick update covering two things: a small set of balance changes and the current status of quests. The meta features a variety of decks across classes and strategies balanced well against each other, so we've avoided major changes that could disrupt things ahead of the mini set launch. Instead, we focus on a couple play patterns that needed adjustment. I think Amir Drasil and Reserve Spot definitely fit that, with Tree being that since it came out. And then they mentioned quests. We have been following community discussions around the power level of quests and appreciate everyone who's taken the time to share their thoughts. Our goal this expansion was to bring quests closer to the level they reached in their first two appearances, rather than the overperformance seen with quest lines in United and Stormwind. For that reason, we're not making further quest buffs in this patch, but will continue monitoring their power level following the mini set. I think that paragraph is the one that most people did not take very kindly to. Excuse me. Especially when I pulled up for reference the first balance patch when they nerfed low and all those other, had the huge nerfs and they buff a bunch of the quests. And they had said that their primary goal was to infuse power into several new cards and to tone down some older decks and early outliers. All of the new cards are built around the quest of this set because of how synergistic they made them. So if we're not trying to bring the quest up to that power level, I don't know what we're trying to do to make the cards from this expansion salvageable. I know I'm getting up on a soapbox here, and this normally isn't me, but it's just like what I don't understand where we're going. I feel like, I've been giving benefit of the doubt. I'm like, okay, I can kind of see where we're going with all these balance changes, but now I don't get it. I don't, and I don't. It feels like 145 cards that are kind of lost at this point.
I don't necessarily think that what they're saying is genuous. I think that they're saying this now because they're trying to say that it's going to be too hard to balance quests and all that. But I'm sure when they had the set in quest, they wanted to be maybe not as impactful as Stormwind, but they want to have it to be playable. And it was the key mechanic. What I really don't understand is this is multiple times in the last few years, we've gotten these tone deaf dev notes that have these things, and do they not have somebody that reads these things before they post them? Deck Tech, I'm sure you need to say this is not good, and before they get it out there, because if anyone can read that and say this is not, anyone that's in touch with the community at all and reads this says no, this is not what you want to say. We already had, and what did we say last week with Zeddy? Hearthstone needs some wins, right? And they haven't had a win in a while. We had the $158 pet. We've had, Hat being let go. We've had a really couple metas now that have really just not hit. I'm playing Starship Death Knight, and how yeah, I mean, it's insane that they put this statement out and no one said, and who knows, I'm sure maybe some people did try to say, or maybe they're too afraid to say, who knows, but this is not what you want to say. This is not the tone that you want to put out. You could have said more things like just, hey, the meta's kind of balanced. We don't want to screw with it too much because we're about to put the mini set out. That usually throw things into a little bit of a chaos. So let's see what happens. And then we'll make adjustments after that. We're touching a couple cards because they're, slight outliers, whatever. This whole thing about the quest was just, whether it's true or not, or if that's really how they felt when they were designing it or not. I'm sure the initial designers didn't say, hey, let's bring back quests and make them suck. That didn't happen. That is not what happened here. So I just wish that somebody in public relations would at least maybe read Twitter for a little bit, or Reddit or something, before they let some of these things go into the wild. Giffca, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah. I think that the idea of like Amir Drasil and Reserve Spot being like the standalone touches from this most recent patch feels a little odd. I feel like Amir Drasil has been an outlier for a long time, and so like to wait until now and then just say, okay, well this patch we're going to make sure it's a very very narrow set of cards that we're affecting. We're certainly not going to buff anything. That part feels a little bit odd to me. Where I think that if Amir Drasil is like on your watch list, it's something that you could have taken care of a little bit sooner. And then, okay, if you are going to say, we're going to put in one round of changes before the mini set, there are so many cards just desperate for some love from the Ungoro set. And it doesn't necessarily need to be like the quests themselves. I kind of understand that the conflict and tension there is you don't want to overcorrect a quest and say, oh, well, now this is like just the most repetitive tier one, like every time I see that come down on turn one, I'm just like annoyed and eye rolling to see it. But there's so many things that are out there from this expansion that are just like you don't even think about that. You just immediately go right past them in your collection. And I feel like that's kind of the shame here. Is I understand this is like a lower power level set, but there has to be at least a little bit of like intrigue or something where it's like, oh well, under the right circumstances, I could actually make this work. One like random litmus test that I've had that I noticed in this expansion is like I went weeks into the expansion and just like didn't earn a single new achievement from the expansion, and I was like, why haven't I gotten like any achievements? I was like, oh well, I'm not playing any of the new cards, they all suck. And so like I think that is like a test. Is like you can't even go out of your way to put some of these Ungoro cards into your deck. It's just not worth your time. And so I would have liked to see a couple little nudges here and there for cards that maybe aren't getting as much love. Especially if you do have a mini set on the way, but still like weeks away, and folks are just dying to see some Ungoro cards be a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And so, the reference wanting it to be closer to the first two sets of quests. I wasn't playing when either of them came out, so I wasn't playing for any of Unguro, and then I jumped in Ashland, so I caught the second year of the Savior's Quest. But so Unguro, I have no idea. I know that I've heard plenty of stories of Crystal Core and Time Warp, but I feel like those are the only two that I've really heard much of. And then even the Savior's ones, there's a couple off meta ones that you could have success with. Like I played the Rogue one a ton, and I saw a little bit of the Priest one, and I know like Shaman, and there's a couple others that were meta decks to where I feel like it's close to that, but it's still nowhere near as powerful as they were, to where you have so many more hoops, very specific hoops to jump through for a very clunky reward for a lot of these quests.
And at least with the Ungoro and the other quests from back in the day, they might not have been good, they might not have been meta, but people still wanted to tinker with them. Like I still tried to make Quest Warrior work, where you summon these guys. I think when you did, I forget exactly what it was, but like I tried to make the quest work, and people would try to because they were fun, and even it was almost like a challenge. When decks are worse than Whizbang, it's not a challenge. It's not worth even trying. It's not. There's no hope in some of these. And to be fair, I've seen Quest Priest work. I've seen Quest Shaman work. It with specific things. But I've also rolled them pretty easily. So who knows like where it is? But like every once in a while, you'd be like, oh wow, that maybe there is something with Quest Priest, and then the next 3 times you see Quest Priest, you're like, well, okay, never mind. But yeah, it's the design of the quests was not trying. I don't think they were trying to make it weak, or they just weren't. They just didn't want it to be the constant lethality of the Stormwind. And I think there was a lot of good things in the Stormwind quests. I like quest lines. Obviously, Demon Seed, it was a problem. It was a good thought. They made a bunch of changes, and it's a digital card game. You can make it strong and then pull it back. We've talked about this many times, and I just wish they would do that, because even the Priest quest was annoying, but there were different ways you could build it. It ended up being the same build all the time, right? Because you had certain cards that would, but design it that way, in that, hey, here's the quest, here are the cards that can be played around it, but also think about what other options. Give us more than just, hey, this is always going to be if you have to play cards like 1, 3, 5, and 7, like the Hunter deck right now, give us more options for the 1, 3, 5, and 7. Have different thoughts that maybe go different routes. Oh, if you go 1, 3, 5, 7 this way, you're really going a discover route. You go 1, 3, 5, 7 this way, you're really going kind of a face route. Here's a maybe control route. Give more options around the things you're building around, and then maybe people will have more ideas than the obvious template of, hey, this is how I was supposed to build it. Oh wait, it didn't hit. Never mind. Let's move on, because this class is washed for this expansion until something happens, and then or we end up playing the old decks. I don't know, but
Yeah, my thing with that is I do agree with that, and I'm fine with that as a design philosophy. I am okay with cards being made that they're awkward right now, but there are 4 more sets coming that this card is generic enough you can put these tools into it. Almost all of these quests have those, except for maybe the Rogue one, because Shuffle's not something that we normally see a ton of. But Mage is going to discover a bunch. Hunter's going to play Beast. There's always going to be cards added, but then say that in your dev comment, because Hearthstone has not done that typically. Of the cards in that set, you get a little bit of support, not a lot of support later on. If they're planning to do that, say it. I get that you don't want to give away your big plans for the future, but it's just like, we know that these aren't where they probably should be now, but there's stuff coming that's going to make them competitive. Say something. Tell us, so that we're not writing them off.
Yeah, I
So
think that the way they described it is kind of just like they're in a monitoring phase right now. If you have kind of plans for the mini set, I guess maybe they don't want to like overpromise and say, oh, just hold tight for the mini set, then you'll be really pleased with this expansion. Because I'm sure that if that doesn't land, then folks will be up in arms against that. And then if they overcorrect or they push something straight into tier one, and it's like, oh, now this quest is just like the most insufferable quest, like people will be annoyed about that too. But saying that we're just monitoring that's the part that I think that folks have a little bit of a hard time with is, you can picture a handful of things that aren't that controversial that you could maybe try improving or playing around with in between now in the mini set.
So in software, there is this concept called agile software development. And it really isn't agile as they say it is. And you have to get certifications and this whole process. You get these 2-week sprints and you have trains and whatever. But the whole concept is kind of you're supposed to be able to adapt and change on the fly. And what I think that I wish Team 5 could do, and I don't obviously have zero insight into their process, how things go, but I think that they should see how cards are going, how the meta is going, and then when they put the mini set, be flexible about what that mini set is going to look like. Now, I understand you can't do that with like StarCraft because that's specifically themed. But if you say, wow, hey, Mage really could use something for their quest that could really kind of this, and here's a good thought. Maybe make new maybe not, maybe wait until closer to the end to change some cards. And I'm sure they had the mini set ready before the set launch. But if you could say, okay, we're going to use the mini set for this, but also let's try to be ready to shift cards so we can make the game better. These better. Oh my goodness, better. Make the changes that might help. Like I remember playing Earthen Paladin, and we needed one more kind of Earthen payoff. And it would have been great if the mini set gave you that thing. And sometimes that happens, but it's already because they held those cards back for that, and then we get that back. And sometimes you get cards in the mini set that why is this here? And then you get the next set, and you're like, oh, that's why that was there. So I just wish they took the mini set, not only the mini set, but core. Why not shift things around in core, saying, hey, by the way, here comes patch 2.2.5. These 10 cards are leaving core. These 10 cards are coming to core. And you can have that power to kind of try to shift the narrative about things. Hey, it looks like Rogue can't do this because it doesn't have enough this. Okay, let's add this. Let's look at the core. Look at all the billions of cards we've made in the last 10 years, and let's make a change because we're a digital card game that has a core set that we've said that we can bring cards in and remove cards. So let's do it. Let's take that opportunity and figure it out. Anyway, I thought the news section was going to be pretty quick. Pylet, what's our main topic?
I know I'll take the blame for that. I had a soapbox to get on for a little bit, so I'm back to school. I'm back in teacher mode.
I mean, I kind of went off on a couple rants there, so I mean, it wasn't just you.
So, tagging on with what quests feel like right now, off-meta decks is what we're going to talk about today, which was great because Giffca had kind of suggested this a little bit when we were chatting. I'm like, yes, a man of my heart, because I'm pretty sure that was the topic the first time that I was on as a guest, was off-meta and playing weird stuff, because that's what I have done for multiple years. I haven't done it as much lately, but
you kind of do. We get the pilot program
every now and then. I haven't had any good ideas lately, so I haven't had anything that works. Let's go with that.
So Giffca, the pilot program is Pylet comes up with a dumb idea. He says, he says, hey, I just went 3 and run with this thing. And he gives it to me and I'm streaming and I play it and I go either 0-5 or 5-0. And then if I go 5-0, he's like, oh, never mind. I went 1-6 since then and all that. So every once in a while we find a good deck that works, but it's usually just kind of a, hey, try this. This is fun. And it's a fun experience.
That's perfect. Yeah, I feel like that is like the other half of the off meta or like the homebrew lifestyle is you got to have people to share it with, and you got to have people who are willing to try it out and be like, okay, this guy's cooking something good. I'm gonna give it a spin and let you know what I think. That makes it all the more fun.
Oh yeah.
The trouble is, Pylet gives them to me when I'm trying to climb, and then I'm like, I'm torn between, hey, I need to try to climb, and hey, this looks like a lot of fun. 3,000 MMR later, I'm like, well, I probably shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, this road is not for the faint of heart. And I feel like the catch is I'm not even a content creator, so like I don't stream. And so like if you're playing off meta decks and like it's a part of your content and like you lose a bunch or you play a lot of terrible decks because that's part of what get people to watch your channel, that's great. If you're me and you play a lot of bad decks and that's just by your own choice and you don't make any money from it, that's a problem. But it's still it's part of the lifestyle. You have to embrace it.
You make money streaming?
No, no, I
Oh,
make no money. That's the
no,
problem.
no. I
Why?
mean, one
Oh,
makes money
okay.
streaming.
Oh, okay. Yes. Somebody, maybe.
Um, and yeah, it is a special breed. Like you get the funky monkeys who are really good. You get the war shacks that are really good, and it's a thing you embrace. And I think if you embrace it, you're not worried about your rank. You do well based on the fact that you are good at what you do and you kind of just don't have that anxiety of, hey, I'm trying to do well, then I'm kind of throwing it away. You're just like, I'm throwing it away, whatever. Maybe I'll go on a run and I have a really good deck and I take it there and maybe I make something meta. Every once in a while you get the somebody that makes things meta. You have like, and then you have like the Mark McKays that make these weird random things in wild, and they're like, oh hey, did you know that you can do these three things? And I'm gonna, but I initially, when I saw his stats, he posted his stats, and I didn't know who he was at the time, and I was like, "Can we get him some coaching?" Because his stats were like 3%, but I didn't like, I didn't understand at the time what he was doing, and then I was like, "Oh, okay, I get it."
Yeah, and some of them make it. I mean, Penflinger Libram Paladin, that was a funky deck. That was
Yeah,
an out
changed
of
the world.
nowhere off meta deck that became the best deck for a little bit.
I used to like Funky, now not anymore. Hated that
Wasn't
deck.
me.
Was me.
So got Penflinger nerfed. But anyways, to get this somewhat back on rails. So we've kind of talked some reasons for playing off meta decks. A lot of people play them because some they find more fun in that. They want variety. I always liked playing them because then my opponent didn't know what to expect. I always liked kind of having that surprise factor. And then I know there's a couple different things that people use to define off meta. Typically, I think the most common is the lower play rate, but also a lower win rate is very common, to where people refer to those tier 3, tier 4 fringe decks that have a low play rate as off meta, to where you can win with them, but they're not seen as much. So a couple different definitions there, but I know for me, I kind of mentioned it already, when I'm making or playing an off meta deck, I'm normally looking for something that is out there enough that it's going to surprise people, and typically is something that then I can use to target whatever the meta deck is. And I feel like that's a little bit easier when you've got a generally stronger format, but you've got those couple of decks that are very distinctly tier 1, upper tier 2 by themselves, and I'm going to see these 40% of the time, and I can play this to beat it. So what are you normally looking for when you're trying to make an off meta deck?
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's a good starting point. Is the call to arms for building an off meta deck tends to be when the meta is highly stable and things feel like, okay, I know what I'm seeing out there. 40% of the time is going to be this deck, or like over half of my games are one of these two decks. And so like sometimes that works out and you can kind of build against it. But like just for kind of point of references, I'm the guy who's like day one Demon Hunter comes out and it is just tearing up everything. I'm like, I can't play Demon Hunter. What can I do to beat it? Even if you tried it, like that every single one of your opponents is Demon Hunter, and you still lose, and that's okay. But yeah, I feel like the idea is once you have a sense of what everyone else is doing, a week into the expansion, things like that, that things converge earlier and earlier now. But like if I know on every single turn what my opponent is doing, and on every turn they have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, that's a fun tactical advantage that I think is kind of cool. And so like with the Dragon Warrior that I was playing last month, I would play turn one Dark Rider, and people like the typical Hearthstone player who's playing only tier one decks. If I say the word Dark Rider, they probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But as soon as that card hits the field on turn one, they have to like literally take a beat and be like, "What's happening? This is not this is not a warrior deck. This is not a class that I'm prepared for. Like, I don't know what's happening now. And that's always a really fun kind of experience when you see your opponent like actively have to consider the game is now unfolding like way different than they expected. So yeah, that's what I like. There's a little bit of a like tactical advantage there, but like I'm mostly just like I enjoy having fun with it. Where when you get them to emote as you're sending lethal to their face because everything came together, you're like, that's chef's kiss. That's what it's all about.
My favorite part about playing decks like this is when you put a card and your turn and you watch your opponent hover over the card.
Yes.
And then hover over it again. And then hover over it again. And they're just like, I don't know what's going on. And it's those moments. It's like if you've listened to the show, obviously I've had an unhealthy obsession with a few different cards, like or a few different archetypes or whatever. For the most part, I play meta decks. I'm trying to become a better Hearthstone player, but I do keep going to the well of things. As recent as like 5 weeks ago, I was still trying to make some kind of Rye Cleaver deck work. And I'll go back to it again, probably at the beginning of a month, try not towards the end of the month when you kind of run out of things, but on the climb and stuff like that, I'll try to make things work. And every once in a while I'll be like for the first day I played the Cinder Shaman that I was playing, I had a pretty good win rate. I had like a 70% win rate. And then it ended up being like a 40% win rate when I was all said and done. But for a moment there, I was like, oh, do we have something here? Do we have something? And no, we don't. But it felt like it for a little while. And when you start playing some of these cards that people are just like, I have no idea what's going on. That's a lot of the fun. It's just, and when you win with those, it's just perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah. The example that I referenced earlier in the show of Arcane Watcher, turn 3, 3 mana 5/6. It literally can't attack. And so your opponent is just staring at it and they're like, well, presumably this guy has a plan for this card. I have no idea what it is. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I love that there's tension built into that where you now have like exposed your opponent to say something interesting is going to happen next turn. You don't know what it is. I built my deck around it. And then turn 4, you got spell damage, that five attacks going right to your face. That's good stuff.
Oh, because I remember that being kind of like in a Silence Priest as well, I think.
Oh yeah. Silence Priest used it much more effectively than Shaman did, but yeah, there was a home for it too. I also used the Spellbook Binder. If you've ever heard of that card, 2 mana 3/2. It's the gnome with the pink mustache, and if you have spell damage, you got to draw 1 card.
Yes.
And that was good stuff. That was a staple in my deck as well. So all those things where it's like people have no idea what's going on, and you hit them with a gnome for lethal. It's good stuff.
My 2 favorite wild decks are not meta. The one is the Scam Deathwing deck, where you get the little 3/4 or whatever that absorbs a death or it summons a copy or something, and you pull you get the Deathwing down, it gets a copy of it because when you draw it gets the death rattle, I think. And then you swing with your weapon that triggers a death rattle, and then you get a board full of dragons because the Deathwing summons all the dragons. And people don't. And that in Sunkeeper Ra, I love playing Sunkeeper Ra because that one no one sees coming. Because you're playing the turn, you're setting it up, and then it's like cultist, swing, bing, and then you have Sunkeeper Ra, and they're like, what the heck just happened? And then they kill it, and then you just get it back again because you had the secret that brings it back to your hand, and you play it again. There's nothing they can do because they've never seen the card. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I actually knew a bunch of those spell damage cards you were talking about because I played a bunch of Ras Frost Whisper, the mage shaman dual class. I love the spell damage mage, and I love the spell damage shaman. So I think the shaman one became more meta. The mage one I don't think was as meta, but I love that with Egwin.
Oh yeah, yep. Razin and Egwin were both amazing, feel good turn 5 drops of like, okay, yeah. I've got my game plan going.
So, we've also mentioned this side of things of normally when you're playing off meta, that typically also comes with a lower win rate, especially early on when you're trying to figure out, what needs to go in the deck and how to fine tune it and how to refine it as best as you can. So how do you keep your mindset set in check with this? Because I think that's the hardest thing to do if you're like, I want to play this this thing. I have this really cool idea. I've lost 6 games with it.
Yeah. So that's a really hard part. So what I will say is like it has been my experience that the early on in a new meta, new expansion, that's always been like the sweet spot where anything goes. Like the deck building is really fun, everything's off meta, so like, you can do whatever you want, and it's always a good time. However, with kind of like the theory crafting streams and like the preview deck lists and like the summary of, oh, this is going to be really good, like that window of, ignorant bliss of what's meta, that window has grown shorter and shorter, and then you get into the, oh, well, actually, day one, hour one, things are pretty well established, and you're like, that's the part where it can be a little bit tough to kind of settle in and say, okay, well, there's clearly a best deck, and now I'm running into it like 3 out of every 4 games. What do I need to do instead? Yeah, I feel like you need to have a good mindset and say, I don't mind losing. Losing is a part of this. I'm going to try and figure out what works for me, and I'm going to, make sure that if I'm stuck on one deck for or like one idea for a while and it is just absolutely not working, you got to be willing to switch to something else. I would say it's some of it is like a fool's errand, being a home brewer and a deck builder and stuff like that. But at the same time, like if you're willing to at least say, okay, I'm done with that idea, I got to move on to something else. Like that's one way to keep your ideas fresh. Like don't get stuck on something for too long. Be willing to try out different classes, move on, and like see if you can find something that works.
And I would suggest that if you had an idea in hour one, day one, you were all of a sudden it's all Quest Paladin all the time. Don't delete your idea even if you lost 0 and 6, because the meta shifts a lot in the first, because in the first week or two, everyone's like complaining, oh, this deck needs, how did this deck ever make it? And with the exception of a couple like Low Druid or whatever, a lot of times that's just hyperbole, because a lot of times someone targets it, someone comes to the new deck, and the meta shifts and the meta shifts and the meta shifts, and eventually it kind of evens out to something. But initially, that deck that's oppressive usually does not stay oppressive for more than a day or two until something else shifts around. So if you're like, hey, this deck kept losing to this, don't give up on it. You might find that it'll work in a day or two. And if you're committed to it, go for it. But I also have a hard time bringing it. Climbing, when I'm climbing before I hit to like D5, it's fine. I don't care what I play. Like I'll play whatever. But once you hit D5 and then you start trying to finish off that climb, it's really hard. This time around, I tried to make a Quest Quasar rogue work, and I brought that to casual. I did not bring that to, well, I brought it to ladder once I actually started winning with it, and then that was okay. It was another one of those ones that I've won. The worst thing that honestly, okay, this is true. This is 100% true. The worst thing you can do with a deck that you build is win with it right away, because then you start believing in it. And then like if you're like 4-1, you're like, oh, I figured something out. This is great. And then you start making excuses and you start kind of like justifying things. And then you're like 5-11. You're like, okay, something went wrong. So I think that I think it's worse when you win with it and better when you start losing and then you kind of figure it out and turn it around.
Yeah, so I spent pretty much all of the last week, probably 2 weeks, just in the Diamond 5 dumpster, just playing all sorts of different stuff. It was terrible, not doing super well. And then earlier, maybe like a few days ago, I switched to a Discover Hunter with Incendius and a couple other things, and I went 14-1, and like straight to Legend. But my MMR was presumably was so bad that I encountered a Whizbang deck at Diamond 2. And I was like, I couldn't tell if that was like, some opponent who was just maybe popping off with Whizbang, or if I had spent so much time in the D5 dumpster that I was now like literally facing off against Whizbang decks. But, credit to that person for playing their Whizbang. They're part of the off-meta crew as well.
It's probably somebody that listens to the VS report.
Yeah, they're targeting Quest.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I definitely find that I have to be in the mindset of this is what I'm doing this play session. And that's something that I typically do anyways, of when I sit down to play, if I know that's going to be for a slightly longer time, am I playing to climb and to win? Am I playing to learn a deck? Or am I playing to play something off meta and mess around? And if I'm in that mood, then I typically can push aside the record pretty easily, especially if I'm doing it early in the month where, there's no better feeling than that you cannot lose stars at this rank while you're trying something new. It's fantastic. So doing that, at bronze where you can't, lose all those stars. It makes it feel a lot better than seeing that star go away and see the number in the corner for deck tracker go down.
But still, when you pull up your stats at the end of the month and or as you're climbing, like, how did I do? And you're like, oh, wow, I really lost like 70% of my games with this class. Maybe I shouldn't have done that.
I did
You
that
got to
this week
rely on that
playing
rank
good
floor.
decks.
It's a safe space. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we don't talk about stats when you're at the rank floor. They don't count.
See, and that's where in your little stat spreadsheet, if you keep one, you put a note saying board off meta. I did that for a couple months where I had like a 40% win rate for the month, and it was the last month of expansion. I was bored out of my mind with the meta. I just said off meta decks all month, and my win rate was atrocious, but I knew why. So, and it makes it, at least if you know why, normally it's better.
Well, maybe they need to add that to HS Replay and Firestone. Just be like, hey, don't count these 30 games because I was just being silly. I wasn't really trying. And then they could, okay. And then you can get your win rate up that way.
I think
I'd like to be able to take some points away from other people's wins. Like, it shouldn't count. If you won against me and I was playing, like, you might be inflating the win rate. That shouldn't count.
I do know on Deck Tracker you can archive the deck. If you want to take that off, you can archive it, and then you can unclick a checkbox, and it doesn't count in your stats when you're looking at your summary. So if you know that you've tanked it because of that, you can archive the deck and be like, okay, without that nonsense, this is how I actually did when I was playing meta decks for the month.
However, when you look at your stats all time for a class, it will count. So
well, yeah. So that's okay. That also includes when you started the game and didn't know what you were doing as much. So it all balances out eventually.
Yeah, I got a new laptop a few months ago, so now all my replay stats. I don't think I have my forever deck history of all that stuff. It's really a little bit more recent. So I don't have lifetime stats, but I do try to keep an eye on if I'm making a new deck. It's like, okay, do I think that this is getting better, or is it exactly 48%, and I should probably just switch gears soon.
So, what formats have you found it easier to build something off meta? Have there been either specific expansions that you remember, or these types of things were in the meta and defining the format that made it easier for you to build?
Yeah, as far as which metas are, or which formats are really good or highly memorable, I almost maybe start with the opposite direction of the expansion is so packaged or so plug and play. I think some people kind of refer to it as parasitic design, or if you have something like StarCraft, for example, you're either using all of those cards and they're all going to be really good and work well together, or you're using none of the cards whatsoever. Maybe you put just a 1/1 Zergling in your deck and no other cards, but in general, you're probably putting the entire package in. So I would say that's kind of tough, where if an entire set comes out and it already just is designed to work together, it means that if you're not doing that thing, you don't have very many cards to play with. That can be tough. The cards and the formats that I like are when the new kind of themes and kind of the new packages are more little bumps in value, or they have nuances along the way of this card isn't going to win me the game when I play it, but if I find a way to use it in kind of a thoughtful way, I'm going to get a little bump to my expected win rate the moment that I get this synergy going. And so that is more interesting to me, is kind of having to comb through the set, look at, okay, this card, what else goes with that card? Okay, well, if I want to do those things, what do I need to do for my early game, and so on and so forth. Give us a problem to solve. Don't give us a prepackaged solution and says, well, all these cards go together. Literally just type this one keyword into your search bar, put every single card that comes back, and you've got 22 out of your 30 cards. Those versions of the metagame I don't find as interesting.
So while we were talking about this, I pulled up there's a page that came out a couple years ago on HS Replay that I believe it uses Blizzard API to get your stats for each class lifetime. And much like typing /played in Warcraft, I don't recommend going to this, because if you were not a good player back in the day and you've gotten better, it still counts the times that you are not a good player. And I'm looking, and I have a few classes that that are green, over 50%, but then I have, at least looking at Warrior, is 44.2% with a little note here that says stop playing Black Rock and Roll Warrior. So I don't know why they figured that out, but
I might have to pull that up. You said it's on HS Replay. I could find it.
I gave you the link in Discord chat already.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm willing to name and shame, so might as well have a good time my first time on the podcast. I'll see if I can pull it up.
Yeah.
All right.
While you're doing that, yeah, I definitely feel the same. To where I went when I was working on the show notes earlier, I went back through my deck tracker, just all my archive decks, and tried to find some of my favorite, off meta builds that I've done, and a lot of them are very Stormwind heavy. And I felt like that, that year with Stormwind and Ultrac especially, that's when I had the most success trying to find something that was a little bit off. I guess one of them might have been a little bit earlier. Oh, nope, that was Stormwind. Just because the power level was high. We've talked about that, but all the cards were so much stronger to where you could grab those cards that weren't being used and still find something to do with them. And they were still close enough on their individual power level that you could kind of tinker with it and figure out something to do. So that's kind of when I had the most success. I know when I started playing, I had fully made my own decks, because the first deck that I built right out of the gate was Spell Mage in Ashes, because it had, the Incanter's Flow to reduce the cost and all the, no minion cards in your deck. So that was the first deck that I played, and it was awful at that time. It was so bad, but I had so much fun with it. So those are kind of where I have found the most success, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like I like it when the win conditions are kind of variable and you got to plug and play them together. Like, you got to figure out what cards you're going to assemble that will like each incrementally increase your chance of winning. But it's not like the games or the meta games that I don't care for as much is like it's the one card show where, if Mech Warrior just keeps playing Testing Dummy, like that is 100% of their strategy across majority of games, or the Fyrak Rogue, like, okay, it's all about Fyrak. How many times can I, either bounce Fyrak, or how quickly can I get Fyrak? Things like that. It feels a little bit like one-dimensional. I like just like simple, clean value cards. Like I'll use a bad card from the recent expansion just to compare, is like the Torga. If he's gonna, that sweet value of potentially drawing 2 cards if you have, the kindred synergies in your deck. That's just like a nice little bump along the way that says, hey, I want to play some kindred cards. What do I do that helps me do that? Torga's there for you. But yeah, I did look up my stats. I've played a lot of games of Hearthstone, as it turns out. It says that they were last updated 4 months ago, but my lifetime win rate is 51%, 51.1. And then I've got Rogue is my worst, and Demon Hunter is my worst at 49.3 and 48.9. The rest are over 50%. So I guess there's some hope for off-meta deck builders, as you too can have a 51% win rate if you just try really hard, and instead of playing the best decks, 51% is all you need. It's like, I think they have some of the stats where, if you just have a X% win rate, you will get to Legend in this many number of games.
Yeah.
The catch is that I spend a lot of time at 20% and like really, really bad win rates. And then once I have a deck figured out, and like once I'm happy with a deck, I feel like my bar for like, okay, this was a deck that I want to play to Legend, it typically ends up being like 60 or 60, like, yeah, 60% or higher, like local win rate for me from like D5 to Legend. That's kind of my sense of like, okay, this is actually like an off-meta deck that is worth playing. If it's something where I've cobbled something weird together and I'm winning every other game or 51% of my games, I'm probably going to keep switching it up until I find something that's like,
Yeah.
okay, this is actually beating most of the meta. I'm happy with this. I'm going to play it more. And yeah, and maybe just a quick disclaimer is like, I don't claim that this would be a 60% deck all the way to top 1,000, and like, no, you're probably not going to win a tournament with it, and no, you're not going to get a ladder finish with it. But like the 60%, something like that, that's like, you've got at least your pocket meta figured out, and you can somewhat reliably play a deck that you're really comfortable with and have success. And like, that's what I look for, not a top 1,000 11x, star bonus or anything like that. It's just like, get to Legend with something new.
And it's one of those things where, like, when you run into a deck like that, like so that's off meta, that starting to become meta. Maybe you see it and you're like, "What truck just hit me? I don't understand." And then you see it again, and you're like, "Oh, this is becoming a thing." And then you think about it, and then you're like, "Oh, okay, wait a second. They're gonna do this. They're gonna do this. I need to do this. I need to be quicker here. I need to make this reaction." And if you see it, start seeing it more and more, you can make that reaction. But when someone plays Torga, you're like, I don't know what they're going to do right now. I mean, if it's an elemental mage, sure, you can figure that one out. But if it's like, I don't know, some other class, then you're like, I don't know what's going on.
I played it in my warrior. I was playing the 8 mana dragon that goes down to
Oh yeah.
5. If you've got, I thought that card was super powerful
Hmm.
last month. It wasn't very good against Protoss Priest, but it actually was. It worked all right against Dorian Luck, where you could just essentially keep stacking armor and also chipping damage directly. And there were a lot of ways to kind of copy the dragons and like double their battle cries with dark gifts and things like that. So that was my most successful Kindred deck was dragons. Every other kindred, not so much.
I won't play that because I am a Protoss Priest magnet. I feel like I've been playing 70% Protoss Priest. I hate it.
So I'm gonna pass to you two first because, as I already alluded to, I kind of made a list of some of my favorite ones. So I'll go last because I have story times to go with some of them.
Mhm.
But what are some of the favorite off meta decks you have built or played?
I'll go first just because I've already mentioned them all, but like mostly the rogue stuff in wild, like um the scam deck for Deathwing and the Sunkeeper Raw Rogue. It always seems to end up being Rogue because Rogue has a lot of tools that can do random stuff.
Hmm.
But like, and we've made some earthen builds that have worked. We've made some weird paladins that have worked. We made some, but for the most part, I just take kind of what I have a lot of ideas, and the trouble is most of them suck. So I don't think I'm really good deck builder as far as off meta. I can tweak some decks. Sometimes I can like say, oh hey, let's pull this card out, and I found like a really nice little, oh hey, this card actually, I don't know why this isn't in the meta. Let's play with it, and people don't know it. So I'm more of a not really off. I want to be. I want to be a deck builder, but I also want to get better. So I'm trying to get better first, so then I can offset my bad play with my decks that I'm making with solid Hearthstone play. So we're working on it, but I think I've already mentioned all the decks that I've typically have kind of tried. How about yourself, Gifka?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I talked about the shaman a bunch earlier. That was like my all-time favorite. Another example was I don't even know what metagame this was or how many years ago, but when there were Reno decks, like the Highlander decks in Standard, there was a Highlander like mid-range version of Mage that I made that I thought was really fun, where essentially like rather than playing a really slow value-oriented Mage, like the Malygos card and the Reno Highlander that cleared your opponent's board, those were both just like really good cards. And so that like style of, okay, these are some cool workaround cards. People might be using them in this direction, which is like very slow, control-y. I'm playing control mage and then I get Reno. It's like I think that you could also flip it on its head. Like, what would it look like to make a tempo version of that deck? And turn 6 Reno clearing your opponent's board or Malygos giving you lethal, like those are both cards that are very flexible. They can be in a more proactive strategy. So like things like that were really fun. The other one that I had a lot of fun with, maybe like a year ago, something like that, was there was a hero power druid with like the armor card and the attack card. People were like pretty one dimensional with only using the attacking version, like the plus attack groovy cat, I think. But I wanted one that was like, no, you got to get some armor in there too. There were some ways to duplicate it. And then like the one major kind of weak point of Druid was AoE and things like that. But there were a couple cards in Standard at the time that were both actually pretty solid in like Prison Breaker, and there was a 7 mana Naga in particular that if you played 3 spells, you could deal 3 damage to all enemies. And I never saw anybody play it ever, but it was actually just like a perfect fit for this deck. And there would be so many games that you would just like, your opponent would go wide and you just wipe out their entire board, gain 6 armor, deal 6 attack, and it's like, you know, things like that where I don't know if it would have become meta or if it was some hidden gem, but like spending a little more time or like going back to the well and saying, well, what could I do to shore up this weakness? Like that's always a really kind of intriguing part of Hearthstone and deck building for me. And when you get like you get that sweet spot and you get that one card and it's like it's just working for you, that's really a satisfying experience for sure.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly what set it was. I think it was Sunken City that I was playing in the Coin Concede Listener series. And Ridiculous Hat and I were playing against each other, and we both decided that we were going to play off meta decks. Um, the most meta deck that was played was he brought Prestor Druid before it actually took off and became a kind of real deck. Um, but I remember I submitted my deck list, and about an hour later, I got a message of, I am so excited for this match because I put together a dragon mage with big spells and Drakefire Amulet and a bunch of big dragons. I think I was playing a rogue that I had built, and I forget what my other deck was, but none of my decks were anywhere close. We spent half of the match reading each other's cards, and it was fantastic. It was the most fun I've had playing Hearthstone. Um, but I think the favorite ones that I've built and have had success with were I had a hand buff Beast Hunter that was around Stormwind to where you played Don't Feed the Animals, the corrupt card from Dark Moon Fair, to where it gave all the beasts in your hand, +2/+2 when it's corrupted. You played Porcupine, the Death Rattle, deal this minion's attack. You played Zixor for Zixor Prime, and I was just running people over. I think hand buff Paladin was super popular, and I was outstatting the hand buff Paladins. I was playing huge Zixor Primes on turn 6 or something because I was able to discount them and just doing these really fun, buff hunter things. And then I think I've talked about it on the show before, I had a stealth Death Rattle Rogue. So I was playing Spy Mistress and Gangster and all these stealth minions with Greyheart Sage to draw. And then my Death Rattles were Korak, just because I needed a second one, but the main one was Infiltrator Lillian. Death Rattle, some of a 4/4 Forsaken Lillian that attacks a random enemy, and then you got it on the weapon, the Counterfeit Blade. You played the whatever it was, not location, but whatever the original thing was, objective, with Snowfall Graveyard to duplicate it. And I just killed people. Like, it was an aggro burn deck, and I was just killing people on 5, and that was when Weapon Rogue, Poison Rogue was super popular, and I was just killing them first. It was so much fun.
That's actually a really good point. A lot of times, if you can mask what you want to do against a meta deck, and people think, oh, they're going to do this, they're going to do this, and they kind of lull into like a self security, and then you hit them with the bam, bow. They're like, what the heck just happened? That is, like, I think, a really good way to do off meta stuff, is trying to find a way to take, oh, they played this on 1, they played this on 2, they played this on 3. Clearly they're a cycle rogue, and then it's like, nope, sorry, that didn't happen.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like there have been some examples where like control warlock, or like, if you were seeing a warlock on ladder, it was going to be a slower version, it was going to be more of like a control version. But if you could build an aggressive strategy, and all of a sudden, like, you got your turn 1 flame up, and someone's like, oh, I mulliganed the complete wrong way, like I went greedy, I'm about to get run over. Like, anytime you can kind of flip the script and go slow when the meta is expecting fast for that class, or vice versa, you're usually in a good spot.
I had a really fun egg lock for a while with Gandling, when you play a card, destroy it, and summon a 4/4. So that was a really interesting card. It wasn't good enough for me to stick with. But I've definitely done that, taking meta decks and tweaking them. During Barons, I had a Miracle Rogue where I threw in Ticketmasters to shuffle in the cast when drawn spells to summon 3/3s, and I was winning the mirrors because I had more boards. I still had Alexstrasza and Kazakus and all the discounts and scam Miracle Roguey stuff, but I just had more boards, and I was running Grand Empress Shekzara to draw the tickets. And I remember finding a bug with that card because no one else was playing it. There's a very weird interaction with it. It was drawing stuff too many times or something odd, because I had 3 tickets in my deck and I summoned 5. I'm like, I don't know what happened here, but something wasn't right. Here's a bug.
Go buy 3, get 2 free.
Yeah.
Dark Moon Fair free tickets for everybody. That's great.
I think one thing that would actually help with off meta building is I think a lot of times when we're building these decks, we're focused on the thing. Like, I want this deck to do this, I want the deck to do that. But as we've talked about in the past, your game plan that you go into a deck with is not necessarily the game plan that's going to win a match. So if you're going up against meta decks, which usually you are because you're playing in a meta, if instead of trying to make the thing happen, think about the things that we always say. How do I win this game? How did they win this game? How do I lose the game? And if you work that into the concept of the deck that you're building, then you could probably come up with ideas of, okay, yes, I want to do this big flashy thing, and that's going to work against these classes, but how do I survive against these classes? And you can't solve for everything. You can't make a 100% win rate deck. It just doesn't exist. But you can kind of say, okay, I can accept losses against these classes, this particular style of deck. I can accept wins here, but how do I do against that middle of the pack? And how do I adjust my game plan to be, if I'm the beatdown, if I'm the aggressor, if I'm control, whatever. So I think try not to get so locked in on doing the fun thing, which this is me saying do as I say, not as I do, because I know I get locked into those things. But if you're going to be better at building these decks, you have to think with that kind of a mindset, I think.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like some metas are more maybe supportive of that than others, where sometimes like the meta game is when you play this deck, they do the thing, and the thing comes down on turn 6, and whether you win or lose is like, are you ready to answer that board on turn 6? And other meta games, it's like, okay, the thing comes down on turn 8 or whatever it may be. And then others, it's more like, okay, you got to have more of an incremental approach to the game, and you got to be ready to react. And they can disrupt this way and you can disrupt that way. And so, oh, make sure you save this card because it's always going to be important in this matchup. Like, don't throw it away. I think that, yeah, anytime there's more kind of dimensions to every single game, that's a little bit more interesting for other meta.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I have to add in here is, Tito, I'm disappointed that you forgot about one of our favorite off-meta paladin decks. Because we both played this one. The
What do we
Dancing
got?
Paladin. Kangor?
Ooh,
Oh,
dance floor,
that
yeah.
wasn't meta?
Huh? I don't think it
Come on.
was. It was popular for a little bit. I don't think it was John Bray good. I don't think it was actually
Okay.
good. So
I played.
I think we
I,
were playing the John Bray version of it because it has Mass Reveler in it, and that was just John Bray played that in every single deck until that card rotated.
No, I think we also played our own version of it. I think we
We
kind of
did.
built our own stuff around there. We played a lot of Kangor. Kangor was one of my favorites.
We did.
Wasn't my countess favorite, but Kangor was. I love Kangor. Kangor, trying to work into the Eartherns and all that. Oh, that was a time that's where I got most of my Paladin wins, was during that like year and a half stretch. And I did point out that in the last like 2 months, I have like 20 Paladin games. So I don't want to hear this, he's a Paladin main anymore, because otherwise I'd be playing Paladin right now. But we are just what we want to play at the time.
Yeah, so,
And sometimes Paladin.
all right. Any final thoughts before we wrap this up and move on to the last bit?
Nothing.
All right, Giffca. We have one more interview question for you. What is your favorite dessert?
That is a good question. I'm gonna have to go cheesecake. I feel like cheesecake is a very reliable dessert. If I'm allowed to, I'd like to add a scoop of ice cream to that. I don't know if that breaks the rules, but I'd say cheesecake, scoop of ice cream, maybe even a cup of espresso. Now you're talking.
I don't know that. Oh, cup of espresso sounds like a nice little topping to that. I could definitely go for that. So, if you'd like to support our show, you can do so by joining our Patreon over at www.patreon.com/breadandbutterhs. That's N, not and, because somebody already had bread and butter. Although I probably could have done bread and butter HS, because I don't think there's one there. But, we can't go back in time. Features you get, if you contribute, you get the raw audio early, access to a members channel on Discord where most of our previous guests are available. You can help shape future questions. You can say, hey, you're having this guest on, can you ask this question? And as long as it's not something inappropriate, we will ask it. You can give us ideas, people you want to have on. And if you'd like to help us in a non-financial way, just let people know about the show. if you're in your communities, if you're in Discord, say, hey, Bread and Butter had Giffca on this week, and he's talking about this website. Come on, check it out. We're an obelisk scheme here. You just tell one person. You don't have to tell two. Just tell one person, and we'll take it. And of course, if you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, although Spotify I think only does stars, but if you give us a 5-star review, it helps people find the podcast, because the better our rating, the more people will see it suggested when they look for Hearthstone podcasts. Giffca, where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, so I am a terrible social media. Like I don't have any real social media presence, but you can find me on Discord. I'm on a variety of the Hearthstone channels and things like that. So feel free to send me a direct message anytime. Otherwise, yeah, go visit the website giffcastavern.top. And then my email, you can contact me for that site, is at the bottom of the page. So happy to chat with people anytime.
I have some bad news for you, though, Giffca. If you want to start promoting something, you're probably going to have to start engaging
Yeah.
with social media.
I think, yeah, it's like I kind of have to create a business entity now and say, okay, I'm ready to share this with people. So you kind of have to do all the things that people expect when you're ready to share it with people. And yeah, if you got no social media presence, that's missing one of those gaps. So you'll probably hear more from me on that in the coming month or so. But in the meantime, definitely feel free to send me a direct message or tag me in any of these Discord channels. Always happy to chat.
And if you eventually need a community manager, we know a guy. Pylet, where can people find you?
You can mainly find me on Discord, Pylet712. That's Pylet. You can also find me on Twitter at the same handle. And I have Blue Sky downloaded, but I don't have an account set up yet. So you'll probably soon be able to find me on there, escaping the things that are happening on Twitter. But we'll see.
And you can find me on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok. I also have a Blue Sky, but I don't post there. I probably need to. You should especially start checking out YouTube at Tito Santana HS, because we are now posting clips. We are posting VODs. For the longest part, the audio of the clip was being posted to YouTube, and it has just, a picture of something and then the audio. Now we're starting to do video and whatnot, and clips. So please go subscribe there, like and subscribe at Tito Santana HS, comment, all that. It helps people with the show, and all we're trying to do is, when we have great guests on like Giffca, we want people to hear them, and that's our main goal, is to spread that love. So Giffca, do you have anything you'd like to promote, including your website, but also our shout out this week?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I thank you guys for giving me a chance to kind of talk about my website. Really excited about it. I would love to partner with people. If folks want to run a tournament, streamers are interested in using it, or want a demo, like, definitely reach out. I'd love to connect with folks over the next month. Planning to post it on Reddit pretty soon, or to the greater Hearthstone public. But in the meantime, some kind of shout outs. So NHL NJ fan from THL. He's been awesome over the last 6 months, kind of giving me feedback and thoughts about the website as I was building it. And he was the one who encouraged me to reach out to you both. So major props to him. Really appreciate it. The Chicago Hearthstone community, they've been awesome. That's kind of how I've grown very deeply in love with the game of Hearthstone and continued playing it for all these years. And they were also play testers with me for my website over the last month. So really appreciate those guys. And then also my wife for supporting me in all the amount of time that I spent on Hearthstone and Hearthstone adjacent website building now. So yeah, really appreciate all those people. Couldn't have done it without them. And thank you to you both as well for having me on the show.
It was a pleasure, and I like the pun of deeply, because you get the Chicago deep dish pizza. I'm sure that was a subtle reference that people probably didn't get, but I got it.
I can recommend deep dish or Chicago hot dogs to anybody who wants them. So.
Pylet, do you have any shout outs or promotions this week?
Yeah, I'm going to shout out one of our local game stores, Crafty Coins, for having doing a great job at building a community, doing a great job at welcoming kids into play and running youth divisions and making sure that the adults that are there are treating the kids correctly. That way, those communities can continue to build. I know that that's something that doesn't happen in all places, and it's awesome to see them doing that. And then also shout out to you, Tito, for something that you left off of your life outside of Hearthstone, of putting in all the time this past week, putting a bunch of clips and VODs and all the work that you've done behind the scenes to kind of help share stuff with the podcast.
I appreciate that. It's been a decent amount of work, and a lot of times it's like, oh, this will take 20 minutes, and 4 hours later I'm like, I'm still here, but we're trying to make things streamlined so that way it's not so much work. we do like what's called low effort content, which is we already do something and we try to take stuff from that and turn it into content. So hopefully it's fun. Hopefully I've been having a good time with it. And I am going to shout out us because next week we are having our first, technically second, but our first live casting, not live casting, but we're going to be live streaming the podcast. Obviously subject to change if it happens, but next week we're going to have on World 8 and McBannerface, and we're going to be talking about their recent experiences in the Masters Tour qualifying tournament and probably just competitive play in general. It's going to be a lot of fun. And hopefully you guys can come and check it out. That'll be at twitch.tv/Tito Santana HS. So we hope to see you there. But anyway, guys, I think we're toast. We'll see you.
See ya.
Thanks a lot.
Slide two brothers meet one another when they slide up to the mic. It's bread and butter with one another. Let's start up that recording light.